Welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is Trader Dan. It is Friday, July 15, 9:09 a.m. in New York City. I actually trade in New Jersey, just across the water from the city, but I'm effectively in New York because I'm so close to the city. Today I just want to walk you through very briefly on how I find stocks to trade. I have my screen set up in a way that I normally trade, but I'm not going to go into the detail of why I set them up this way or why I use them the way that I do. I'm going to save that for another video. In the meantime, if there are any questions that pop up about something that you see and how I set things up and you can't help but to ask a question or make a comment, feel free to do so in the comments. And then when I get around to making that video, I'll try to address each one of those points. In the meantime, just to repeat, this video is just about how I find stocks to trade, which is one of the key criteria for being able to be a consistent trader in the markets. You've got to know where to find stocks, or really more how to find stocks, because you can find stocks just about anywhere. I do have a couple of specific ways that I do it, just because it's how I've learned to do it and it works for me. Various other traders do it differently. You will find your own way to do it as well. So let's get right into it. What we see on the top part of the screen, I have my actual charts, and I use TradingView, which if you're not familiar with it, I highly recommend that you check them out, tradingview.com. So I have my charts currently set to track the SPY, which is how I generally read the overall action in the market before I dive into individual stuff. So for example, here on the 1 minute chart, right here, we see that the SPY is currently, looks like it's trending nicely since 8:31 a.m. But now that's only on the 1 minute. I like to use the 5 minute and the 15 minute to increment, to gradually pull out further to get a better sense of what that overall picture is. And so you can see here on the 5 minute, that same trend going up. Where is it coming from? At least on the 5 minute chart, we can go as far back, the way I've adjusted the screen, as far back as 5:15 p.m. Eastern yesterday. But if I want to look a little further out on where that's coming from, I can pop over to the 15-minute chart over here. I can see that we are coming off of a low, from session low, at least from 10 a.m. yesterday, of 371.04. So that generally looks like a good move. So there may be some strength in there. We also see that the price is currently above the 15-minute and the 5-minute moving averages for the 200, which is the line in red, and the 50, which is the line in blue here. So that's generally a sign of strength. I do sometimes pop out to the daily to get a better look at that. What do we see? Well, that's a very different picture from what we're seeing on the lower time frames, right? We're seeing that even though on the lower time frames we are bouncing off of a low, we are still at yearly lows. So that's not necessarily an exciting overall market picture. That means to me that there may be some caution in the market, which means there may not be quite the volatility that I generally would like to see for stocks. So I need to be a lot more patient looking for my key criteria. How do I confirm that? Well, let's get into that. I'll go right into Market Chameleon, which is a platform, an online platform that I like to use to screen for pre-market activity. I generally only trade the morning, so I'm less concerned with after hours unless I'm tracking something specific the following day. So what I like to look at is the most active, or the most active by percentage gain from yesterday. And also I take into account volume and what the catalyst is. Preferably some kind of fundamental news that impacts the bottom line of the company in a meaningful way, and not just some little hype. I'm not interested in hype. I'm interested in meat that actually generates a strong reaction in my favor. I also look at the top gainers, and this can be a little confusing sometimes because top gainers are not necessarily the most active, and sometimes the top gainers are not the exact same ones by percentage over here either. And as I mentioned, I like to see volume, so when I come over to top gainers, I see that already there are quite a number of stocks here that are not even above 1 million shares, and that is the minimum volume that I like to see on a stock pre-market to get my attention. And so I know right away, because these are not at above 1 million, I'm pretty strict about it, so even though this is 994,000, it's not at 1 million. So I'm going to leave it alone until it crosses 1 million. But also in terms of price range, it's out of my price range. I generally like to trade stocks from $3 and below. I will trade stocks from $3.01 and above, but not much higher than the teens. I don't get into the 20s just because I don't have that kind of capital. And I'm looking to make meaningful impact in my P&L. So I need to be focused on stocks that allow me to maximize share size within a reasonable price range. So that's why I primarily stick between price range of $3 and below. So Market Chameleon is a free platform. They also have subscription services. I like them because it's very simple and straightforward. I just need to see who the top gainers are, what the percentage is, and then I'll dive in separately via Fidelity, which is where I actually execute my trades and hold my money. I'll get into a later video about why I use Fidelity versus any other platform at the moment. It's just what I've gotten accustomed to. I'm not a very sophisticated day trader yet. I've just been tweaking and working out of Fidelity in a way that works for me. I'm sure some others might be having that as well, so hopefully that other video will benefit you. So coming back to Market Chameleon, as I said, I use the free version because I don't need any more than just to see what the percentage number is and the overall volume for the current session, and then I'll look into the Fidelity more closely to clarify and confirm if it is a trade for me or not, a stock for me to trade or not. This stream refreshes every 15 minutes, and that's fine for me because it takes me approximately 15 minutes to properly analyze a stock rather, for what I am looking for. So by the time I'm done with that initial setup and evaluation, I can refresh Market Chameleon and see if that stock has moved any further in my favor or less, or to see if there are any new participants within the range that I like. And I'll show you what that looks like right now. So I'll come over to Market Chameleon, press the filter for percentage change to make sure that it is sorting according to highest to lowest. And what we see here, highest to lowest, is USEA, price range 429. That actually I am interested to trade because it's not too far away from the $3 range, so I'm open to that. And it did have some good news earlier this week, I believe, if not late last week. So the percentage change is appetizing, the price range is appetizing, the volume is definitely appetizing. I see that there's a little news alert here. Hovering over this, you can see a quick flash of what it might be. Now, this is not the specific news for that stock. This is a Benzinga summary of stocks this morning, so I would have to look more closely. Let's do that with Fidelity. So that's where I come to this window here. I just type their ticker. And what I like to see is, and now you can see the difference sometimes between the Market Chameleon, which refreshes every 15 minutes, versus a more current update on Fidelity, which is we go from a total stock volume, volume traded of 7.2 million to 9.2 million. So already that's a nice bump above the $1 million mark that I like to see. I like to trade relative volume, high relative volume, which means more trading happening than usual. So how do I measure that? I pretty much just eyeball that based on what the current volume is over the 90-day average, over the total shares outstanding. So I can tell you right now, I already like how this looks because we've got 9.2 million current shares traded, over 8.8 million on the 90-day average, and definitely 1.511 million on shares outstanding, which means this is a really low float stock and it can technically move very fast. So now I want to see that's a great start, but I also want to see the news. Let's see what we can find down here. Let's drop in on Benzinga. What is he summarizing? So he's saying that USEA rose 55% to 3.41 in pre-market trading. United Maritime on Tuesday announced acquisition of 4 oil tankers and filed for stock offering on Wednesday. That's not necessarily the most exciting news because, number one, the acquisition of anything means they're spending money in order to, so they're spending money, right? They're not exactly having an order placed with them in some way. It's not exactly an influx of money to them, but it's an investment. So, that could be a decent thing, especially if it works out. But right off the top of the head, that's not the juiciest kind of news that I like to see. I like to see that something like, for example, if we go down below to TBLT, we see that they're up 25.9%. Fast forwarding through this, we see that they recently announced Q2 gross sales through Amazon were 3.56 million, representing a 20% year-over-year increase. That is a massive piece of news that I like, because it means that they have made more money. So from a fundamental perspective, people will be interested in buying, perhaps for the long term, to if not certainly for the short term, because this is positive, clearly positive. So I actually will look at that as well. And that's one of the benefits of jumping into these kinds of news summaries. When you're checking out just one stock in particular, you can also go head to see what else is happening with the other ones. And I can jump back to Market Chameleon to see where TBLT is on this chart. And as of right now, or at least when this last refreshed, TBLT was up 13.8%. But like I said, volume is important for me. And what I see is 652,000 shares traded as of the time of this screen. That's not necessarily interesting to me at the moment, but I know it has potential to get above the $1 million mark. So I'll look in on the stock and maybe set it up for set up a chart to see in anticipation of what can happen later during the session. So let's do that. Let's look at, or before anything, let's look at USEA. You know what, let me go straight to TBLT, because it does have that meeting view. So let's pop up here to market trading view, TBLT. What do we see? On the 1 minute, doesn't look very tasty at all. So that's a second strike against it. First strike is that it's trading less than 1 million shares right now. TBLT on the 5 minute doesn't look any better. TBLT on the 15 minute. Oh, sorry, that's still the daily. Let's go to 15. And it's looking a little better, but still relatively weak. I mean, you can see that, so the blue shaded area on TradingView, the way I have the screen set up, represents the after hours. The light orange or yellow represents the pre-market, and then there's the white space is the regular trading session from 9:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. So we can see that it pretty much flatlined yesterday, and then into the market close, into after hours, it had a nice spike. Probably because, again, it's been trading well, I believe, earlier in the week, and just people came in and bought it up again. So we see that it's holding the majority of those gains, if not 50% of those gains from yesterday. But generally, this is kind of like a weak setup for me. I like to see stocks holding a lot more than this. I would have loved to have seen it still holding support up here in the high 280 range versus all the way down here, although it is making support with the 15 moving average, which is decent. And you can see that I previously set up this chart with psychological levels of $2.50 and $3, which are half and whole dollar marks. And then this blue dotted line up here represents a higher level moving average. I believe this is the 12-hour moving average from a prior day, so this would have to be updated. But at least I have general reference points for the psychological level, the current 50 moving average on the 15 minute, which is not bad. I do generally take a look down at the RSA to kind of smoothen out the action, my read on the action. And I can see that it is holding a little bit of weakness, although this could be a little bit of a reversal, which is to an extent. It's coming into the VWAP on the 15-minute time frame, so that might be resistance. It could be support if it pushes through. Right now, that volume is relatively low compared to this last candle here, so that could be resistance into VWAP. If it holds going through, it might move into a setup that we like. And what I'm starting to do more of now is pay attention to stocks that are holding above the VWAP. So even though there may be an opportunity here to get in early, I'm no longer interested in trying to anticipate early moves. I need to see a stock proving itself above the VWAP, because I want to be in a better position with the odds in my favor, higher probability of my buying strategy to be supported by other buyers that generally come in above the VWAP, especially the more consistently stock hold. So right now it's just testing VWAP. from the low, which is not necessarily exciting for me. That could be a sign of weakness. So I would have to wait to see this stock push through VWAP, not just on the 15, but also on the 5, which is more clearly representing resistance at VWAP, and the 50 moving average on the 5-minute, and also the 200 moving average, which is the red line, with the VWAP on the 1-minute. So I'm going to leave that alone. I previously marked it up, so that's good, and it'll give me a little less work to do later, but right now it's not in a place where I feel inspired to update the chart to today's levels. I'll deal with that later if it does hold above the VWAP, especially if it reclaims the after-hour market high from yesterday at 325. So I'm going to pass on to BLT for now. What else do we have? Let's see. Let's scan this news summary from Benzinga for more detail. Well, I do want to see US EA. Let's see, because sometimes if the news is not strong, if it's a 90+% gainer, that in itself could be a catalyst to bring in other traders into the market. And like I said, it has performed well earlier this week. So let's see, it could still be getting some attention even if the news is not the greatest. So like I said before, just updating across all my time frames, and now this is already looking a bit better. Like I said, you start with the 1-minute, you see that it looks like we're holding some weakness from 8:21 a.m., but we want to zoom out a little bit more. So we go to the 5-minute, we see, okay, that's not exactly weakness, because it looks like it's forming some support at this higher step, if you will, from this lower step and this lower step here. So it looks like it's been stair-stepping 1, 2, and we're now at 3, perhaps on its way back up to retest this prior resistance level of 485. It is holding above the 50 moving average. It's just below the VWAP on the 5-minute chart, so that's a decent setup. Over here as well, we see we're holding some support as well above the 50 moving average on the 1-minute, so that's correlation across 2 time frames. That's exciting. Let's see what's happening on the 15-minute. We see we are holding some support well above the 50-minute moving average, and we are holding support above the 200 moving average, which is the red line, on the 15-minute. So this is looking more favorable. It looks like, yes, I previously did mark up this chart as well. So I have a prior resistance level of 485, which is not the most significant level because it is pretty thin, and but I don't have psychological levels. Let's throw those in very quickly to see what those look like. And just so that you know, I'm not going to go into the detail of how to use Market Chameleon for those of you, TradingView for those of you that are not familiar with it just yet, but I will do so in another video. Or you could just keyword that on YouTube or Google, and you'll find tons of stuff already about how to use TradingView. So I'm just going to adjust this horizontal line. For significant lines, levels, including psychological levels and key historical price levels, I like to use a 4-pixel line to really represent those lines more prominently. Very visual, so I tend to throw things on my chart that maybe a lot of other people won't. So visual for me works. So let me just adjust this down to, let's look at the psychological level of 3. We're going to add in 350. We're going to throw in 4. So we see it's already above 2 psychological levels. It's going to be holding near 4 right now, just slightly above 4. So again, that's another level of confidence perhaps in this stock. It is under VWAP, so we don't know if this is reversing to come back down, or if it's going to just reset after some profit taking and retest 485 and continue up. So we see above 485, what do we have? We have psychological level of 5. So while there is some potential here, I still need to see it reclaim VWAP with some confidence, preferably on higher volume. And we see this right now. We have the last big volume candle was 900,000 shares approximately traded on red, and the current volume candle of green of buy is quite a bit less than that, 398,000 shares. So I really need to see this buying activity increase significantly through VWAP and then start to hold up there in order for me to be much more interested. So right now, the probability is more on the on the selling side, or more neutral than it is exciting than it is on the buy side. Even though the stock is moving, we still have to see how it handles activity above the VWAP. Does it come back down, as in does it get slammed down by buyers and short sellers, or does it hold strength and continue up? That's TBD. But right now I have this chart previously set, so I'm going to fine tune it because I might trade it today. So when I zoom out, what do I see? I look at the daily chart and we see that this is a recent IPO, so there aren't too many key levels, really strong, prominent key levels over a long period of time. So I have to rely on lower time frames that maybe are not the most reliable, certainly not for this extended period of time, but from session to session, there may be something there for me to work off. So what do we see here? We see that on the daily chart, I've previously set up a bunch of prior psychological levels. Again, whole dollars, $3 and half dollars, $3.50, and some key time frames for prior sessions, but those won't apply anymore because of where the price is in relation to those. Maybe not, we'll see. All right, I just wanted you to see what my thought process is in analyzing a stock for potential trading. And once I feel like, maybe this is something that I want to do, well, then that's when I commit to actually setting up the charts. So what I may do is later today after my trading session, I'll actually record a video of those trading sessions, of that, the chart setup, and also how my performance was for the day. So we see on the 1 minute chart, that's always nice to see, but again, I need to see how it holds above there. It is just now clearing the VWAP, so I need to see strength consistently above the VWAP, which means I need to watch it over a much more longer period of time, not just right here. I want to see how it holds, coming out into 15 minutes, an hour, and so on. So I'm going to be very patient and just let it do its thing and get it into a very strong position that is more favorable for me from a probability standpoint. All right, I hope this was helpful in terms of the walkthrough. I'll just do a quick summary. I always begin at Market Chameleon. This is my primary pre-market screening tool. Again, there are plenty of others out there. You can just Google or YouTube pre-market screening tools or platforms. Market Chameleon is free, but they also have subscription services. The difference really is from free to subscription. Free, it refreshes automatically every 15 minutes, which is pretty slow for some people, and for me that's fine because again it takes me approximately 15 minutes to properly analyze a stock to see if I'm interested in it. And by the time I'm finished with that, then I can refresh, and there I can see what the next stage of that stock is, or if there are other players that I can set up a chart for. The paid version is very likely going to be refreshing in real time. So if that's of interest to you, feel free to check them out. I'll post a link for my an affiliate link, if you will, that I have, that maybe will be helpful to you. And then from here, I like to look at the percentage gainers on the most active side. I like to order it from highest percentage all the way down. I generally look for stocks that are performing well above 10%. The higher the better, and I'll try to focus my attention on those. The more I go down below 10%, I know the overall market is probably not doing very well, so I have to be more cautious. And this is another benefit of having a tool like this, is that when you've done this long enough, you can kind of gauge. It's another way to gauge the overall market and where it might be going for the day. Of course, there's no guarantee, but this is not the strongest looking market right now, especially if you reconsider what we saw on the SPY daily chart and where that is coming from or currently at. We're still not too far off of recent yearly lows. So generally in a strong market, you'd see quite a few more stocks holding above, let's say, 40 and 50%. Right now we only have one stock above 50%, and all the rest are under that. So that's a sign of caution for sure, to say the least. So from Market Chameleon, I jump over to Fidelity, which is my trading execution, where I execute my trades rather. Again, many of you who are more experienced probably use something else. but this is where I started, and this is where I've learned to operate from, and it works for me. For those of you that have Fidelity or some of the more traditional brokers, and you also experience some clunkiness, you'll find ways. Just keep working to find your way to make it work for you. For those that have Fidelity, I will share my process a little later in another video. But for now, I'll just show you that I come over to the search field. I type in, the name, the stock, the ticker for the stock. I look at the research and quotes information. I like to look at high relative volume. For me, that means a high session volume. For example, 9.2 million shares here over the 90-day average, in this case 8.8, over the shares outstanding. So that equates high relative volume, which means there's a lot of interest, a lot of activity in this stock. Generally, that alone is exciting, but not necessarily enough. I like to see some meaningful news, which we saw here does not have the most meaningful news, but again, sometimes the price action alone is strong enough, like, wow, look at that, like the 1 minute chart up here, where it is really just flying past VWAP on much higher volume than we saw earlier. So that's a great sign. Now I want to see when it starts pulling back and holding, how does it trend for the day? And of course, we are now at 9:36 a.m., so we are in the open market session. So I'm going to get to finalizing my chart setups and into trading, and then I'll follow up with a video later on. Again, I hope this was helpful. Let me know in the comments if there are any questions or observations you'd like to share, and I'll try to address those. Have a great trading session. Cheers.